So the flag system. I have students use the flags. They code red for confusion. What is another word for confusion? Failure to comprehend, failure to read. I did not make meaning out of text, therefore I am confused. If I start to see a flutter of red flags, 3 or 4 red flags poke up on a child's text, I know that I have a learner who's in danger of not comprehending the text. So they're silently reading the 3 or 4 pages that I might have assigned, maybe it's only 2 pages, or subsections that I've assigned, and they're using these flags to code. It means that when I'm roving the room, I can just glance at their book and see at where the flags are sticking out, where the challenges might be. Gives me an incredible feedback mechanism without reverting to round-robin reading. Round-robin reading is actually a strategy to promote the lack of comprehension of a text. The reader is so caught up in performance anxiety, they don't remember any of it. They're so afraid they're going to say fatigue instead of fatigue, and every 4th grader is going to laugh at them. So that you don't want that to become a factor. Round-robin reading, the one who's doing the reading is in trauma. The one who just finished reading, they got to buy. They don't even have to pay attention to anything that's going on in the classroom. Their anxiety is over. The ones who haven't read yet are trying to figure out which paragraph they're going to be assigned to read so they can rehearse it so they don't mispronounce fatigue. Big problem. So round-robin reading is not the way to progress through Montana Stories of the Land or any other text, particularly if your goal is to make them competent, capable readers of nonfiction text. Super important that they be the reader. They are the reader. And we know that we can't make them the reader if we're expecting them to do the reading at home as homework after school. 10% do, the 90% then fail. So, the flag that is a question. You would think that questions would be bad, but they're actually the comprehension skills that allow the learner to know something is unsettled in this, and they have a question, and they don't know how it's going to be resolved. What I ask them to do is when a question is resolved, to remove the question flag. So I'm looking to see that question flags go up and come back down, and go up and come back down. And if I see one's been up for a while and I'm roving the room, I may actually pause to the learner and I might say, "What's your question?" And they'll say, "I just wondered what happened to the rabbit." Did the author answer it? Yeah, back on that page. And very frequently they'll have answered their own question. We read by posing questions, making hypotheses, and then progressing through the text with this ongoing visualization and question and hypothesis that's working, that's moving us ever forward through a text. I wish textbooks would more frequently, nonfiction textbooks in particular, would be organized with the headings and subheadings as really crystalline, tight questions instead of statements. I would love to see headings be questions. And then the child would know that the purpose for reading that little section was to answer the question, and they could be seeking constantly the answer to the question. It's one way, particularly for intermediate level readers, to make a nonfiction text very, very accessible, and it helps reinforce that questioning is the thing that's always going on in the mind of a sophisticated reader. So the next flag is favorites. I want them to find parts of the language that absolutely, or parts of the story that absolutely startle them, One of the students in a book that I was working with recently had just read something about glacial Lake Missoula and erratics and went, "Oh, I know where there's a rock like that. I know what an erratic is." They put a favorite flag by erratic because they'd seen one in their dad's field. They knew what that was and how that got there, to think that a rock can float on ice. How shocking. A rock the size of a Volkswagen, no less. Just dropped. So favorites. And then I will sometimes ask them to find something in the text. And I have a find if they found it, they put a found flag. And then I have endings or stoppings and startings. Right now it's a green flag. It could be another color flag, but I need red to always be for confusion. So questions about this as a strategy for being able to gain feedback about what your learners are experiencing as they're reading the text. Have any of you used an annotation system, something like that? Here's how it looks, by the way, when a child is doing it. Stop signs, fines, questions, favorites, right? And obviously this one is because of the Anishinaabe word that probably the child went, I don't know. And there's a glossary at the back of this book, so that's a perfect teaching moment, very straightforward and simple teaching moment in this particular novel. There's a segment, sometimes I will have them search for things where they're actually tracking a change. You could track a chronological change, you could track a change in the attitudes of people within community, you could do any of those kinds of things. Here is one where in a 3-page segment, the protagonist of the story, or heroine, if you will, who's an 8-year-old girl, experiences 4 really serious shifts in emotion. And so this is a vocabulary lesson, and there are strategies for being able to tabulate and gather this kind of information as well. Having students interact with the text is what ends up being critical. That's the key. They've got to be constantly mentally interacting with the meaning of the text, not just the text's